It's a bit early to start calling the biggest story/scandal of the year, but I'm going to go out on a limb here and say the fallout from what is called the Grievance Studies Affair is going to be one of the most important of the year. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about, please take the time to watch a couple of short videos that you can find on Mike Nunya's YouTube channel. Mike Nunya is an Australian filmmaker currently in the process of making a feature-length documentary about the Grievance Studies Affair. Anyway, here's a primer for what it's all about.
Since approximately June of 2017, I, along with two other concerned academics, Peter Boghossian and Helen Pluckrose, have been writing intentionally broken academic papers and submitting them to highly respected journals in fields that study gender, race, sexuality, and similar topics. We did this to expose a political corruption that's taken hold of the university. By this point, several of these papers have been accepted in highly respected journals.
And here are a couple of examples of the papers that they submitted and that were accepted.
And one that claims that dog humping incidents can be taken as evidence of rape culture has been officially honored as excellent scholarship.
We rewrote a section of Mein Kampf as intersectional feminism, and this journal has accepted it. Social work.
And if you want to understand the level of ridiculousness of these hoax papers, and of grievance studies more generally, I thoroughly recommend you watch the full 2-hour podcast with Joe Rogan. The level of delusion is truly breathtaking. Now, in the aftermath of the revelations around this scandal, it's not surprising that there's been very little, if any, introspection from the grievance studies departments. After all, they haven't been publishing their nonsensical gibberish and taking over humanities departments for decades just to suddenly give it all up. One of the participants, James Lindsay, detailed the sequence of events. Starting on October 12th last year, just 10 days after the Wall Street Journal broke a story about the grievance study hoax, Portland State formally initiated a committee of inquiry to determine whether he had engaged in research misconduct. Specifically, the committee would be investigating the issue of whether the fabrication of data for some of the papers in the grievance studies audit constituted a breach of research ethics, a proceeding which they notified him may take up to 60 days. And their concerns were referred to Portland State University's Institutional Review Board. This board's duty was to determine whether or not conducting the audit should have required ethical approval and the informed consent of the targeted journal's editors and peer reviewers. Obviously, we did not and could not seek such approval or consent. Well, of course they couldn't. I mean, what were they supposed to do? Ask the editors and peer reviewers for their permission to participate in publishing papers for the purposes of revealing the fraudulent processes of said editors and peer reviewers? Kind of defeats the purpose, doesn't it? Then on November 27th, the committee wrote, the committee unanimously agreed that the dog park article represents an unambiguous example of research data fabrication. Now here's what James Lindsay wrote about Dog Park. Of note, Dog Park was by far the silliest of our papers, which was a point we always intended to reveal in full to the public once our audit was completed. In it, we claimed extremely implausibly to have examined 10,000 dogs' genitals before interrogating their owners about their sexual orientations. This clearly preposterous data was used as a basis for interpreting human reactions to unwanted dog humping incidents so as to conclude that a human rape culture exists and could be improved by training men like dogs. We wanted to see if reviewers or editors would ask to see this data or question the conclusions we drew from it. They did not, and in fact the paper was recognised for excellence within feminist geography. Here, let's just repeat that again, shall we? Feminist geography.
Oh, Jesus!
But as Lindsay points out, ethical rules about data fabrication are meant to act as a safeguard against and a sanction for researchers who contrive to promote their own advancement directly by passing off and maintaining bogus data with no intention to reveal the truth, which does not apply in our case. Peter Boghossian never sought to benefit from the publication of these papers, and it was always their intention to reveal the true nature of the papers in a timely manner. So it appears Portland State is stretching the bounds of its own guidelines to punish Boghossian. With regard to Portland State's Institutional Review Board, on December 17th they informed Boghossian that he had failed to secure the necessary IRB approval to participate in the grievance studies audit. The IRB indicated that the project met the federal definition of human subject, by whom they mean the journal editors and reviewers, who are living individuals with whom we, meaning only James Lindsay, interacted to collect data about them through communication and interpersonal contact. Well, yes, that would have been the point of the audit of their review and publication practices, although the board's enthusiasm to stretch the usual intentions of these regulations is evident in their inclusion of the reviewers, who are exempted from such a status in Portland University's own research guidelines by their guarantee of anonymity. So again, it appears they are stretching the intent of these guidelines just to be punitive. Now, in response, according to the Chronicle of Higher Education, more than 100 scholars have written letters defending Boghossian, chief among them Steven Pinker and Richard Dawkins. Brett Weinstein tweeted that Peter Boghossian is guilty of data fabrication in the same way that actors are guilty of identity theft. Well, it's funny he should say that, because that's exactly what some of these nutcases believe. Anyway, at the end of Mike Nunya's most recent video about PSU's accusation of ethical misconduct, he urges those that support the Grievance Studies probe to send respectful letters and good faith arguments to Mark McClellan, the Vice President for Research and Graduate Studies at Portland State. And be sure not to troll them, because undoubtedly they'll use those types of letters to play the victim and claim that they are being harassed. As I said at the beginning of this video, I think this whole Grievance Studies affair is potentially very important because it exposes and pushes back against the kind of postmodernist dogma that has infiltrated and taken over much of the humanities. So I second that call to action to write a letter in support of Peter Boghossian. And as usual, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'll see you next time.